wish them well. That was a step that he mentioned. You wish them well, and then they get better. He says that's actually all you have to have. He said everything else over that, they come to you and ask for help. You agree to help them. You wish them well, and then they get better. Everything else that we do is window dressing, and the idea of it is all the different techniques, the pressure points, the asanas, the postures, the herbs, the acupuncture, the hot and cold compress, the meditation, the prayers, are all about simply focusing the person's attention in one place at one time in order for these things to happen. And he says, as far as what is the minimum technique, he says there is no minimum technique because you don't actually have to touch a person to bring them to healing. As far as what is the minimum of balancing that needs to be done or what have you, he says, since it's not really up to you anyway, because their life is really expresses a relationship between them and their spirit, and them and their God. And you're really not part of that equation directly. And so we are more seen as facilitators of the experience, which is always available to the person. But they just can't, for whatever reason, in real time get a hold of it at that time. And so we don't create healing. We don't really control healing. We can't, and ultimately we can't limit healing, right? So the good news and the bad news is even bad doctors can't limit healing ultimately. Ultimately, if healing is in the cards and is part of that agreement of that person as a spirit in this life between them and their spirit, then they're going to find the healing they need in spite of all the bad practitioners all around them. But it might take them longer. It might take them a while. And some people would say, well, that's just the journey, right? But the same traditions that say these things also say that we were always provided assistance in real and practical terms, and we were always provided guides in the bardo. So, for example, they say that even after you're dead, you're not by yourself. Like some philosophies say, well, you come in, and then when you die, you're by yourself, and actually the traditions say, actually that's not true. That actually we're never alone, we never were alone, we're not alone, and we never will be alone. That we had support, and we have people, and if you want to say energy to support our life, the moment we were born, all of our life we have benevolent deities and wrathful deities, so we have friends and enemies that help us through our life all the time through our life. And then after we die and we're in the bardo, we have the benevolent deities and the wrathful deities. They'd say the Buddhas and the demons who come and help us through the bardo. And so in the worst state, like in Tibetan Book of the Dead, it says there are 7 realms of existence. And the lower realms are called the hell realms, or the realms of the hell beings. And they're not good places. They're described as kind of like really not good places, right? Even in the worst of the worst of the worst incarnations, the book says that there are deities like Bodhisattva who are in those places, who are there to help us and to help reduce our suffering and help increase our awareness, to give us more the possibility to participate in a healthful way in our life, even in the worst place of the worst place of the worst place. Now, I believe that the Tibetan Book of the Dead is not literally about what happens after you die. I actually think that the Tibetan Book of the Dead actually refers to all the different lives that we have in this life, all the different ways that we live in this life, where we're in different situations. How it can't possibly be any worse of an environment to think of someone who's in a prison cell being tortured against their will, especially for some crime imagined that they may or may not have had anything to do with. And in fact, one of the things that came out in this study was that these torture research was being done with prisoners who they knew for a fact had nothing to do with any criminal activity, but that they were collateral damaged. In other words, they'd been picked up in perimeter or in periphery of something that had happened. But they knew for a fact, because some of these were like 10, 12, 13-year-old boys who were arrested and brought to Guantanamo Bay and so on, and they could not possibly have had any material involvement in 9/11 or anything like that, but they have tortured them, some of them 200, 300, 400 times over a period of 5 and 10 years now, to see what happens to them as a result of that process. Okay? Is there any possible idea that hell could be any worse for someone in that situation? Is it even possible to imagine that hell could be worse, that there could be a worse place, than being in a place like that? So hell exists on earth right now, this minute. The realm of the hell beings is real, it's tangible, and it exists concurrently with our own reality. Okay? And so medicine is really the guidance and the tools that we have that help us move between these realms ourselves, and then we become bodhisattva for other people and for other who are other realms and conditions. And so I need help with some things in my life, and so I find and I attract and I draw people to me who have the ability to help me and to give me insight and to help me clarify my realizations and my rationalizations of life and so on. But then at the very same time, I'm constantly scanning for those who are in a lesser realm of existence, so to speak, than myself, who are suffering or have pain, and mental, emotional, or physical, and I am acting as sort of bodhisattva for them. And they, in turn, reach back a little further and get a hold of someone who's a little bit behind them. And so we create kind of like a chain of assistance, but we're all connected in this way. I just wanted to say that the beautiful part about the EFT is that it's voluntary. It's voluntary. There is no involuntary. The article that I read this morning did make reference to that the APA does have a code that allows for a doctor to treat a patient involuntarily if they believe. So that's still a current rule. That's not old rule. It still exists. It's in their scope of practice that a psychological doctor, a psychiatrist, or medical doctor ethically can coerce a patient into a treatment that patient believes with every fiber of their being is harmful for them against their will. And that's still legal. I saw the reference today that was reaffirmed in 2008 and is still active in APA principles. Okay? So EFT, Thai Yoga, and the things that we do are actually voluntary. Okay? There's no coercion. There's no force. There's no involuntary treatment. When we look at treating emotional disorders with EFT, notice the constant reaffirming. Now, I want you to understand that you're responsible for your own comfort. You're responsible for your own health and welfare. You're responsible for your own happiness. And I want to reaffirm over and over and over again that even as we're going progressively through the treatment, that you still have that right, that you can still say when, you can still say no, you can still say it's enough is enough at any time. And as a course of treatment, I constantly reaffirm that we are in a voluntary relationship. That we're in a voluntary relationship. And the reason why is the end result of this process is not that I treat you or that I cure you. The end result of the process, for Dave, for example, in Dave's Sphere of Water, is that Dave is now fully and completely empowered to handle this and similar issues from now and forevermore. And those tools are now no longer in the hands of someone else. That Dave has to obtain those tools and obtain those helpful remedies from somebody else with their permission or through payment. In other words, it's no longer part of the economy equation. You know, he paid Gary for treatment, I guarantee you that. I know that for a fact. He paid Gary for a treatment. But the end result of that treatment is not dependency, where he now has to pay Gary more and more and more and more money to keep treating him. The end result of the treatment is he's now able to self-treat, self-medicate, to become more self-aware with his own illnesses, his own imbalances, and literally given basically even right there the simple tools to begin to extrapolate what he learned about his fear of water to other issues. What if, for example, excuse me, I know this to be true because I've actually heard other interviews with Dave other than what we have heard here, that Dave does like many people do, where he realizes that he got resolution from a very serious psychological issue that he had almost all of his life, which every medical person would have said, of course, is incurable. What other incurable issues might he be able to address with the same technique? And then what happens is you see a process of experimentation where people have a little bit of success here and they go, it worked on that, I wonder if it would work on this. And then they extrapolate that and they begin to treat themselves for wider and wider issues, and also then to treat their friends and family who pick up the method, and it's kind of a lay wave, right? So you've got people like me who are sort of professional and dedicated and studying it and trying to be very diligent to learn everything I can about how this works. But then at the same time, this is that underground wave that I was referring to with Galileo and his model of the universe, that it started with the scientist. Galileo was a scientist. So was Copernicus, his buddy. It started with the scientist. But then from the scientist, you had a lay body politic of people who started to consider that if the church is wrong about something so fundamental as the organization of the universe, that the sun spins around the earth, and that the earth is not the center of the universe. If the church is wrong about something so fundamental, what else might the church be wrong about? What else? That was actually the beginning of the Reformation. In other words, that's the fundamental crack that happened, where not just the scientists, but where other learned people said, what if the way that we've all been taught that the world works is wrong? What if it's wrong? What if the powers that be, all of them, and all of their institutions, actually are wrong? What does that mean? And that started both at the top. Science started to go hell for leather for it, but of course in secret, because nobody wanted to be, die. But then there was also a groundswell of people who heard about this new idea, heard about these new ideas, and started going, what if, and what does that mean for me as a person? And see, that's the crux of the Reformation. The crux of the Reformation wasn't just a psychology or a philosophy debate about, self-determination versus predestination, and that although those kinds of learned debates did take place, the crux of the Reformation was ordinary people like you and I who said, what if it is all wrong, and what does that mean about who I am as a person? Does that mean that there's a possibility that I can create a life that's different from what I've been led to believe my life should be? And as soon as they started going down that line of reasoning, everything eventually has to change. Everything has to change, right? And so we're right at the crisp edge of one of those moments, like the Martin Luther Reformation. And Martin Luther has already tacked his precepts to the door of the cathedral, and the gauntlet's already been thrown down, and this cat is out of the hat. It's out of the bag, okay? And every one of us, every one of you, is part now of that process. And who knows? But I want you to explore that when you're working and when you start practicing, that you try to understand. Just have a picture from this. There's no such thing as just a body that you could ever work on. And people who think that they do just body work, whether I just do massage or I just do body work, are as misguided as people who used to think that the earth was flat and there was an edge to the ocean and there would be dragons past that point. That we are bioenergetic, stress adaptive, human, transformational machines, and we have many bodies and we have many parts that are all present, all operating, all interlocking, all interlacing, all interdependent, synergistic, sympathetic, all the time. And there's no such thing as an inconsequential touching. Your body doesn't know when someone touches you that it's just practice. Your head might say that, but your head might go, well, this doesn't really count because it's practice. I don't really have to pay attention because we're just practicing. It's not really going to affect me. I'm not really going to affect them. How I'm thinking is not really going to affect them because it's just practice. Okay, wake up, smell the coffee. Okay, how you think matters. What you think matters. What you think when you touch what point matters. All of it creates various results. Okay, so we're more powerful than you could ever imagine. You're more powerful than you could ever imagine. You might think, if you have any idea that you're limited physically, emotionally, spiritually, or energetically, then I'm here to tell you that that is a fantasy, that is a delusion, that is not a valid way to think about yourself. You are expansive, you are godlike in your ability to affect each other, and you're godlike in your ability to affect the world. And that's all we're here to practice. And we're here to break those bubbles, And so I would have loved to have been in one of Galileo's classes. I can only imagine what a fabulous teacher he would have been, how much fun it would have been, not only to hear somebody who was talking about some kind of radical ideas, okay, but the fact of the matter is that he was rational. And his radical ideas were a new model of the universe, and he was correct. Okay, and as a result of that, the world's changed completely. Okay, well, those ideas are here now, and that's our next step. We're going to take a break now. Let's go 10 minutes.